Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 25 of IGEL Weekly. Your host, Andy Whiteside. I've got Chris Feeney with me. Chris, how's it going?
Going great, man. Lots of things going on. So many things. It's hard to kind of keep everything going. I'm sure you know what that's like. And I'm excited about today's topic. Big news for IGEL last week. So looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah. Before we go there, you and I were just chatting about Zoom optimization in the world of IGEL and how you handle that. And, what are you seeing most companies do when it relates to IGEL? For example, XenTegra, I've committed that we will optimize Teams, which is easy because Teams and Citrix and IGEL easily work together.
Right.
A little bit of effort, but not a ton. And then Zoom, that you guys have made that pretty easy. So we're going to optimize Citrix and Zoom and Citrix and Windows endpoints and IGEL endpoints and Zoom. But what do you do for the other 5 options that need to be optimized as well? Do people continue to try to knock all those out and maintain all those, or they pick 1 or 2 and say, okay, these are going to work, and the rest you're going to rely on the machine, the back end, to do all the processing?
Yeah, I think couple angles for me on that. On the unified comms, right? I think it comes down to what is your corporate standard going to be, Teams, that kind of comes with, M365. Zoom would be, it's not included. There's some integration there, but you also have to pay for that service, and you get obviously a different type of thing, right? I mean, similar technologies, but not exactly the same, but more or less. IGEL, we do both, right? We have a subscription to Zoom, and we use that as our main corporate thing. We also do Teams, so we go back and forth. Then there's this other thing, Cisco has their platform, and so trying to maintain that is an ongoing effort. I think if it's my business, I would pick one that is used for my key webinars as well as other things. So that would be probably the hybrid Teams Zoom approach. But we've got others that are still using like WebEx and WebEx Teams and stuff like that, and we kind of have all of that included. We kind of maintain those versions as they come out. But it's thankfully one of our engineers kind of took the initiative to kind of sort of document as we have new versions come out, sort of make sure that he understands. He's got this really fancy lab where he can set all this stuff up and document it, so everybody sort of knows what all the nuts and bolts are, not just setting up IGEL, but also on some of the back-end stuff. So that's a nice, and he's submitted that. It's not a pay for it; it's on the community, so anybody can look it over and that type of thing. So. Do you feel like it's kind of one of those back in the day when VDI was emerging, like the protocol wars, like who's better?
No, this is really for me more of a conversation of like you and I literally before I hit record, you saw me send an email to my team asking them to update the Zoom VDI agent. So not the plugin, but the agent. That those things come out once a month ish.
Yeah, they're pretty frequent.
Procedurally, we're going to chase every other month. We're going to update that client. And I'm talking about the VDI piece, not even the plugin piece.
Right.
On the Windows side. Are we going to chase that every month? Are we going to chase that once a quarter? Just, something else to keep up with. It's one of those things I laugh when you hear Citrix or Microsoft or VMware even talking about their desktop as a service. They're really just providing you the desktop. Keeping all that software up to date really falls on the customer or the partner or the managed service provider.
Yeah.
Those are all things that cost time, and time, costs money.
Absolutely. I mean, that's really, I don't know about you, but I only have 24 hours in a day, and, everybody has to figure out where they spend them. But I think we talked about this at some point, maybe prior podcast was, sometimes you get that DAS thing up and it's nice and shiny that first time you see it. And then over the course of time, if you don't maintain it, it starts to get a little dirt and dust on it. And you got to kind of keep that maintained, just like your car. And I never forget my son's got a truck, and, we've been washing it and it's got these little water spots. But I finally went into Walmart and I got one of those little buffer things, those little handheld things. And I was like, let me try this sucker out. That thing got spit shine like none other. I was like, man, I don't know why I didn't pick one of these up. It's only like $20, $30 or whatever.
Yeah.
but it made all the difference, right? And now it looks almost brand new to some degree. That paint job's still pretty good.
Yeah.
But yeah, you got to maintain it. Whether it's your customer, obviously, that can lead to what support cases. Something's not working this, and it might be that Zoom updated something. You got to update the plugins or the version, whatever. Take advantage of new feature stuff. So,
Well, certainly a conversation for people to have internally and figure out which ones they're going to chase and how often they're going to chase it. But
yeah,
today's topic is one that I've kind of talked around forever in the world of IGEL, and that is finally the announcement that HP and IGEL have joined forces, and HP and their hardware install base and customer base and sales teams now have the ability to sell, wonderful HP endpoint hardware. And we're going to talk about the models here in a minute and beyond. But now they have the ability to use the IGEL operating system and the management suite that goes along with it as part of their story. So it's really kind of a peanut butter and jelly. Hey, you got your peanut butter in my jelly. Peanut butter and chocolate. You got your peanut butter in my chocolate. You got your chocolate in my peanut butter kind of thing from the commercials back in the 80s.
Absolutely. But yeah, very excited about this. Long time coming. Just want a big shout out to Bill McCarthy, who's been managing this relationship over the last, I'm guessing, a year or just shy of a year. IGEL Ready got launched officially on July 15th last year, but we've had some big companies come in. And that time, Bill has worked with Lenovo. He's now worked with HP, among others. And we're very excited about this one. We've got a ton of customers out there that have HP devices. Ones we've already, established, plus there's, newer hardware that what's nice here is these three models map to specifically IGEL models as well. And so there's a really good match there. There's another one that's not on here. It's been tested and everything, but it wasn't officially part of this, but we are still at least documenting, and that's the T740 model, which more or less is the very high end. It maps to our UD7, but we've got some 3 solid options here as well that we're excited to talk about today.
Yeah. So let's talk about just in general, the idea of IGEL being an operating system, aka software. When I try to explain it to people, I equate it to Microsoft Windows. It pretty much runs on anything x86. You guys, of course, have the ARM, which is the RISC platform. We don't need to talk about that one with the RX420 because that's kind of a bundled software and hardware solution. But the rest of IGEL, the predominant most of IGEL is a operating system based on what? Based on Linux? What flavor of Linux?
Yeah, so it's a great thing. So it is based primarily on Ubuntu, but here's the thing. While we map to the main Linux kernel, IGEL in a sense kind of creates their own kernel. I don't want to say we're like Red Hat, but we kind of have our own Linux distribution. We pull mostly from Ubuntu, in this case, the Ubuntu 18.04 LT, the long-term release there. But we also pull in components from other Linux things, as you might imagine. Plus, the kernel allows us to, for example, support newer hardware models from vendors like HP or others. And continue to add additional support, and so that being that software operating system focus, and really kind of specifically dialing in on IGEL Linux, that's where our key efforts are now. And it's here we are a year later, and we've got really great established partnerships now with companies like HP, but it is similar. Yeah.
Take me back a step. So you got Ubuntu 18.04, I think you said, but that's based off Linux. What version of Linux?
So it's a great question. Like Linux has many distributions, right? But Linux, in a sense, I actually started putting a training deck on this. Linux is a kernel, and that kernel is what talks to the hardware and other things, and then peripheral support. And then you've got, the distributions that have emerged from that. You've got, there's so many, it's hard to really know, but IGEL, kind of zeroed in. So I'm probably one of the more popular model versions, which is Ubuntu. and we've got some history around that. And so we kind of map to that distribution, but we are and so yeah, that actually right there. Stop for a second. I love that particular that you see the penguin there. I've actually used that to kind of explain, where IGEL is. And so if you look at this, here's the Linux kernel, right? And you can see all the stuff, the hardware, and all the different things that Linux can talk to on the device hardware stuff. And so where IGEL kind of fits is right in this middle part. We've got an operating system for desktop computers, more or less, and we kind of are right in between that red and the gray line there. And so that's where IGEL sort of fits. And then obviously all the stuff, on the left side, the interface devices and all the support for things like that. That's where some of the IGEL Ready program comes in, where we are integrating with some of these vendors. And then of course you've got the manufacturers like HP and their devices. And this whole process is really about I want to say certification. That's the word that's on my mind, but it's more of a validation. Verification, right? It's all similar process, but it's the manufacturer, and there's different levels, right? So there's manufacturer doing a self-certification, there's or self-validation, and then there's a middle tier where they're working with IGEL, engineering, to come to market with something, and then there's the third tier, which is a little bit more advanced, work with IGEL and the vendor. And so, but this is a great graphic. I've actually at some point I'll pull up that deck I was working on, just sort of explain sort of this where IGEL fits into the Linux story.
But Chris, my specific question to you is Linux has different versions. Like I think we're at 11 now. Is that accurate? 11 something?
Let's see. Well, if you go to kernel.org, that'll tell you what the main, they've got the mainline kernel. I think it's at 5 something. I could be wrong.
Okay. So, but there's Linux. So we were talking a while ago about keeping things up to date. So in the world of IGEL, you're really just keeping up to date with IGEL. IGEL's keeping up to date with some deviation from Ubuntu, which is all based on some deviation of Linux. At the end of the day, you just need to know that IGEL's got you covered.
Right, exactly. We maintain releases. We kind of map to. So this is the kernel, right? All the Linux versions, just these more or less kind of, revert back to this. For example, if you even look at our release notes, you'll see what Linux kernel, generally referred. But when I've talked
about 5.13.5 is the latest according to this site, but 5 something, right?
Right, exactly. But that doesn't map to obviously Ubuntu 18.04. Like, where does that numbering scheme come from? Well, it's if you dig in deep, they're basing it off of the Linux kernel, and then the operating system, is written on top of that. I guess a similar thing would be, Windows were written on top of DOS, right? Something like that. So, but IGEL, has been focusing, and one of the nice things about this is with the IGEL Ready program and these vendors with newer hardware and chipsets and wireless things and whatever, it's actually advanced in the software development at IGEL, so that we can add, we bring in newer versions of the kernel and other things that can support some of these newer devices, and that's benefited in many respects. So there's audio updates, there's video performance, GPU, I mean, various things that sort of benefit from this effort over the last year.
Yeah. Well, the whole reason we're having this conversation, well, first of all, let me just point out that 1804 long-term server release is called Bionic Beaver. I think I'll remember that forever. I'll remember that better than 1804. That'll be easy one to remember.
Yeah.
But the whole point in having this conversation is all that effort and all that goodness that goes into keeping IGEL based on core kernels that are up to date and distributions that are up to date. And features, really what we're talking about here, and fixes, is all on the IGEL operating system. And now with this announcement, the guys from HP, for a certain number of models here, we're talking really 3 here on the screen and 4 total, at least officially, have endorsed the idea that you can run the IGEL operating system on their hardware and you get the best of the peanut butter and the best of the chocolate.
Right. And Yeah. And some people might say, well, I know there's another KB article that shows other devices for many years have already, gone through a testing process. Well, that's true. We've been repurposing devices from different vendors for years, but this is more of an official program, very similar to the Citrix Ready program that folks are probably familiar with. We kind of mapped it more or less off of that model, and now you've got the actual vendor signed on board. And in some cases, they'll have the option to ship from the factory. When you order these devices, so they arrive already with some version of IGEL on it. Yeah. So,
well, and for me, a lot of this comes down to the fact that the thin client hardware vendors have been producing the software that goes on these things, and they haven't kept up as timely as we wanted them to. This allows us to take a software vendor who's making an operating system that is, in most cases, day one release ready, and apply it to hardware that's more than capable of doing the job.
Absolutely. And that's a great point. We've seen, certainly in the last year, with this onslaught of remote virtualization, working from home kind of thing, customers where they had hardware and they were trying to do these things, and long and short of it, the operating system on it wasn't updated for roadmap for support, whatever wasn't there. Come in IGEL, and we've already got pretty much all this because that is our focus, and we can run on lots of different types of hardware. And so we've been able to help customers out by taking what they already have hardware wise, and that story certainly has resonated with vendors where they have great hardware, but they may not focus on the software story as much, whereas IGEL does. So that is what we're talking about here today.
Yeah. Well, Chris, is there anything specific you have? Well, let's try this. Do you have a story where you've seen a customer take some model of HP and roll it out with IGEL OS? And is there a success story and something to convey there?
I believe there is. Off the top of my head, I'm trying to think through. I know just in the last couple months we've had one looking at, I think it's either the 640 model that's listed here or the 740, because they had, I think the 740 has 4 display ports or something, up to 4 displays at 4K. So more or less exactly what our UD7 has. Yeah. So that was a financial one where they had at least, I think, 3 monitors, and that's what they wanted, right? They need that configuration set up. So we have, I think, some other starting to emerge now that this website that you're looking at, this blog post went live like a week or 2 ago. So now that that's out, and especially as we sort of head into HIMSS coming up here in a couple weeks, expect more. There's definitely going to be more opportunities. We got the green light to engage with the HP sales team. They already are briefed on what's going on, and so there'll be more coming. So.
Well, I just highlighted this section here that talks about the remoting protocols and in conjunction with Citrix and Microsoft and VMware and Amazon. Mm-hmm. One of the things that makes me most excited about this announcement is this stuff, but it's also the fact that you guys have brought the Chromium browser forward in your thinking, and it's now part of your operating system. And knowing that I could easily put a version of Chrome browser on every HP thin client I ever touch, and all of a sudden SaaS-based applications become very manageable and accessible. I think there's a huge potential play there. There's got to be organizations all over the world that run a lot of SaaS apps that need Chrome that you're going to bring to that story. I think you may have frozen. Yep. Okay. Well, that's an interesting way to kind of wrap up the podcast. But guys, I appreciate you listening, and hopefully this is valuable. I'm looking forward to talking to HP folks and having these conversations with them. This has been a long time coming for me to be able to talk about IGEL and HP in the same conversation openly. And with that, we'll call it a podcast. Thank you.